Here is the English translation of the text you provided. On the morning of March 12, 2023, Rosa Hernandez, living in the Puerto Pito neighborhood of Mexico City, felt her blood run cold when she heard the words coming out of her 6-year-old son Mateo's mouth. While eating tamales in the kitchen, the boy dropped his glass of milk and looked at his mother with such a gaze, as if centuries of wisdom were in his eyes. "Mom, Jesus didn't stay dead for 3 days because that was the exact time needed for his blood to complete the cycle of cosmic purification." Rosa got goosebumps. Her son had never been to church. There was no Bible at home, no internet. Religious education wasn't given at the public school. But there he was, speaking without trembling. It was the only way to break the seal Adam created in Eden. But how did this child know this? An earthquake starting with a phone call. While her hands shook uncontrollably, Rosa grabbed her cell phone. She called the neighborhood priest, Father Esteban. The recording the priest heard on the other end caused him to collapse to the floor. 48 hours later, the recording was at the Vatican. Dr. Giovanni Castellani was one of the toughest theologians at the Pontifical Biblical Institute in Rome. As he boarded the plane, he had only one thought: I will break this kid in 10 minutes and prove it's a fake. When he arrived in Mexico City on March 18, he didn't know yet that he was about to face the biggest shock of his life. The boy playing with toy cars is about to shake the Vatican. In the humble living room of Mateo's house, the child was playing with his toy car. Castellani asked with professional skepticism, "Mateo, what does 72 hours mean? Can you explain?" The boy looked up. There was no fear in his eyes, only patience. When Jesus took his last breath at 3 p.m. on Friday afternoon, exactly 72 hours passed until his heart started beating again on Sunday morning. Not 70, not 74, exactly 72. This is not a coincidence, doctor. This is the time required for human blood to complete 3 full cycles of cellular regeneration under conditions of clinical death in an uncorrupted body. A cold sweat ran down the back of Castellani's neck. This information wasn't in children's books. It wasn't told in sermons. Mateo continued, the seal of original sin was etched into the structure of human DNA. To break it, the lamb's blood had to go through 3 stages: separation, purification, and glorification. Each stage took exactly 24 hours. That's why the body had to remain uncorrupted. That's why Joseph of Arimathea used specific amounts of myrrh and aloe to keep the body temperature at a constant 14 degrees. The psychologists looked at each other. One asked, "Mateo, how do you know about body temperature and DNA?" The child replied with a sad smile, "I don't know. I remember." The boy summoned to Jerusalem. When the news reached Professor David Schemer at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, the man realized he was facing the biggest moment of his 30-year career. He had worked on the Shroud of Turin for decades. But what Mateo said was impossible. On March 25, Schemer flew to Mexico. On March 30, Mateo stood before 7 experts at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, 3 archaeologists, 2 biochemists, a Talmudic expert rabbi, and Castellani. Schemer showed the boy photos of unlabeled ancient jars. Mateo pointed to a reddish ceramic jar. This contained the pure spikenard oil Mary of Bethany used 6 days before the crucifixion. It cost 300 denarii. The body had to be anointed beforehand to prepare the tissues. Air rushed out of Schemer's lungs. That jar had been found in excavations in Bethany in 2019, and its contents were still under secret analysis. Then an ancient Aramaic text appeared on the screen. Mateo read without hesitation, and on the 3rd day, when the dawn stars align with the cornerstone, the Son of Man will break the chains of Sheol. Rabbi Goldstein jumped to his feet, trembling. This text is from an apocryphal manuscript we found in Qumran last year. It hasn't even been published yet. Mateo interrupted, because I was there when it was written. The plane to Tel Aviv. April 10, 2023. Mateo and his mother Rosa flew to Tel Aviv with Vatican and Israeli security teams. As they passed over the Mediterranean, Mateo pointed down. Paul sank here, on his way to Rome. He had a letter with him, it never arrived. That letter explained the secret of the 3 days. The letter is at the bottom of the sea, 200 meters deep, inside an amphora sealed with Jewish wax. Schemer noted the coordinates. When they arrived in Jerusalem, the city was tense. Jewish, Christian, and Muslim religious authorities had been informed. Israeli intelligence was monitoring every step. That night, looking out the window at the Temple Mount, Mateo said to his mother, "Tomorrow I will show them where the real garden tomb is, Mom. Not the place tourists go. 37 meters underground, beneath a house built in 1240. That's where they will find the evidence they need. 37 meters under the earth." On the morning of April 12, the Israel Antiquities Authority team began digging at the exact coordinates Mateo gave. The location was under a private residence in the Muslim quarter. The boy had drawn a detailed map. Beneath the Ottoman foundations was a 1st century AD burial chamber, sealed during Byzantine reforms in 325. At 3 meters deep, they found a limestone wall inscribed in ancient Greek, "Here lay the one who defeated death in 3 days." At 8 meters deep, there was a passage opening to an underground structure. Mateo watched from the surface with supernatural calm. Dr. Schemer went down with cameras. What he saw paralyzed him. A perfectly preserved burial chamber. A stone bed carved into the rock. Fossilized stains of myrrh and aloe. And the most shocking part, an inscription carved into the ceiling in Aramaic. "Blessed is he who understands the mystery of the third day." In this place, death was defeated not by power, but by measured time. But there was more. In a side niche was a small ossuary containing papyrus fragments inside a lead cylinder. When the cylinder was opened in the lab, texts emerged. A first-person testimony written by Joseph of Arimathea. Instructions for preparing Jesus' body for the transformation process for 72 hours without human intervention. Temperature measurements, spice quantities, even the astronomical position of Venus during those 3 nights. Everything matched what Mateo had said. Carbon-14 creates shock. April 15, the carbon-14 analysis results arrived. The papyri dated to 34 AD. Just 4 years after the crucifixion of Jesus. The academic world went into shock. Dr. Castellani organized an emergency meeting at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Representatives of all Christian denominations, Catholics, Greek Orthodox, Armenian Orthodox, Copts, Syriacs, Ethiopians. Mateo was brought before this unprecedented council. Greek Orthodox Patriarch Theophilos III looked at the child with amazement and fear. "My child, these texts you helped find contradict 1700 years of theological interpretation. Are you telling us that the resurrection was a biochemical process?" Mateo shook his head. "No, your beatitude. This is not a contradiction, it's an explanation. God could have resurrected Jesus instantly. But he chose to do so by respecting the laws of nature he created. 3 days were necessary because Jesus' human body had to undergo a complete cellular metamorphosis. Every cell in his body had to transform from mortal to immortal. This doesn't happen in a second. Under perfect conditions, it happens in 72 hours. Then the boy went to the whiteboard and started drawing diagrams showing 24-hour cycles. First day, separation of the soul and descent to Sheol to preach to imprisoned spirits, while the body remained dormant. Second day, molecular purification of every tissue, cleansing of the trace of original sin in mitochondrial DNA. Third day, glorification and integration of the transformed soul with the renewed body. A biochemist from Tel Aviv University spoke up, trembling. "The process you describe is theoretically possible in terms of modern epigenetics. But it's impossible for a 6-year-old child to know this. And for someone 2,000 years ago to know it." The siege of the world press. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, and world media besieged the Old City of Jerusalem. The Israeli government declared the entire excavation zone a restricted area. The Vatican sent its most elite team of experts, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. On April 20, the decisive test was conducted. Mateo was taken to the Weizmann Institute of Science in Rehovot. In front of 20 scientists, labeled human genetic sequences were shown to the child. Mateo pointed to specific regions on human chromosome 2. "Here it is." This abnormal fusion separating humans from primates was not natural evolution. It's the wound of Eden. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil altered our genetics. That's why we get sick, age, and die. Jesus' blood rewrote this code in his own body during those 3 days and created the prototype of the glorified human. Dr. Rachel Cohen, the Institute's head geneticist, felt her knees shake. What you are describing is a theory my team has been secretly developing for 5 years. No one outside this lab knows. How? Mateo looked with compassion. Because you are rediscovering what was explained 2,000 years ago, Doctor. Science and faith are not enemies. 2 different languages telling the same truth. The light at the Western Wall. Midnight, April 27. Mateo asked to be taken to the Western Wall. With his mother Rosa, Dr. Castellani, and the security team, the child approached the ancient stones. About 50 people were praying there. Mateo placed his small hand on the stone and closed his eyes. Then, to the horror of everyone present, a blue light began to emanate from the wall. Exactly from the spot the child touched. It wasn't a reflection of external lights. It was a glow coming from between the stones, as if something sleeping was waking up. People started screaming and crying. Some fell to their knees. Security cameras recorded the event, which lasted exactly 3 minutes. When the light faded, Mateo fainted in his mother's arms. But he was conscious. It's done, he whispered. Message delivered. At the same moment, all over the world. In the following hours, testimonies began pouring in from around the globe. It was reported that at exactly that moment, 0:03 Jerusalem time, the same blue light appeared at different holy sites. St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, Canterbury Cathedral in England, Orthodox churches in Moscow, Protestant temples in Uganda, all at the same time. Security videos and testimonies matched. There was no scientific explanation. Secret meeting of 12, April 30th. Mateo requested a final private meeting with religious leaders at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Only 12 people, the Catholic Patriarch, Greek Orthodox Patriarch, Armenian Patriarch, Coptic Bishop, Franciscan Custodian, Chief Rabbi of Jerusalem, an Imam from Al-Aqsa Mosque, Dr. Castellani, Professor Schemer, his mother Rosa, and 2 neutral scientists. In the chapel of Golgotha, the child spoke with a soul-chilling authority. I was sent to remind you of something. Something humanity forgot. The 3 days were not just for Jesus' resurrection. It was the template of the process every human must go through to attain eternal life. First day, recognizing sin and separating from it. Second day, inner purification through true repentance and transformation of thought. Third day, spiritual resurrection and birth into new life in union with God. Then Mateo revealed something no one expected. In the year 2027, according to the correct Jewish calendar, exactly 2,000 years after the crucifixion, something will change in humanity. A window will open. Those who have completed the inner 3-day process will be able to undergo a transformation similar to Jesus. This won't be magic. It will be the fulfillment of the plan that has always been ongoing. Rabbi Goldstein asked, trembling, "Are you talking about Olam Haba, the world to come?" Mateo nodded. You have 4 years to prepare. Not as separate religions, but as one human family. The texts we found are just the beginning. There are 7 more places in the world where full knowledge is hidden. Jerusalem, Rome, Egypt, India, China, Mexico, and a place in the North Pole yet to be discovered. Everyone there felt the weight of history on their shoulders. The Catholic Patriarch asked with tears, "Who are you, my child?" Mateo smiled sadly. "I am just a messenger. But let me tell you this. I am not alone. Right now, 19 more children like me are waking up around the world. We all remember. We were all sent. Silence and the beginning. May 7, 2023. Mateo Hernández and his mother quietly returned to Mexico. No press conference, no interviews. The Vatican, in coordination with multinational governments, established a secrecy protocol on all findings. Only vague statements were released about archaeological discoveries of historical importance. Papyrus fragments were moved to security vaults in Rome. Excavations were temporarily sealed on grounds of archaeological preservation. But something irreversible had begun. In the following months, verified reports came in about children with similar knowledge from Nigeria, South Korea, Brazil, Canada, and Australia. In Lagos, a 7-year-old girl described the 7 seals of Revelation and their connection to real astronomical events with precision. In Seoul, a boy drew maps of lost Sumerian cities and marked where tablets related to the Three-Day Covenant could be found. In Sao Paulo, a girl led archaeologists to pre-Columbian ruins containing prophecies about the 2027 transformation. The countdown has begun. Dr. Castellani, now leading an international secret task force named Project Triduum, was in regular contact with Mateo. The child had returned to his normal life in Tepito, going to school, playing soccer with friends. But every night Rosa found him on the building's roof looking at the stars. "What are you thinking about, son?" she asked one August night. Mateo pointed to Venus shining on the horizon. "That everything is connected, Mom. Stars, blood, time, love. Jesus' 3 days were like a bridge between heaven and earth. And that bridge is still there, waiting for us to learn how to cross." In December 2023, Professor Schemer quietly published an academic paper titled, Chronobiology of the Resurrection, a Theological Scientific Hypothesis. It became the most downloaded religious text of the decade. No one mentioned Mateo directly, but everyone knew. The countdown to 2027 had begun, and humanity, completely unaware, was preparing to discover that Jesus' 3 days were not the end of the story, but just the beginning of what was to come. And in a small house in Tepito, a 6-year-old boy held secrets that would change the destiny of billions of souls.